Welcome to Mum Abroad's YouTube channel, where I'm joined today by Aida Ramos. She's a translation expert with a degree in English and a master's in translation from Dublin City University. She worked in Ireland, Luxembourg, and India before returning to Madrid in 2007. Aida founded Thinking Side Language Services in 2012. Hello, Aida.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Aida, you're a native Spanish speaker and you also speak English, French, and Portuguese, along with a little bit of Basque, German, and Swedish. When did this passion for languages begin?
Well, I would have to say it started really, really early. Back in the day, back in the 80s, the Spanish education system was quite different from what it's now. And back then, we weren't exposed to languages as early in life as children are today. So our first contact with a foreign language wouldn't be until we were around 10 years old at school. But when I was 8, my parents really needed me to take some after school classes. And there was this language academy right around the corner from where my dad worked. So they enrolled me there. And I started going there, and I just happened to have a knack for it. So they kept moving me forward on the different levels they had. And it was a game. It was like a game for me. And then by the time we started studying English at school, I already had a really, really good grasp of the language. So I was pretty much ahead of the rest of the class, and it felt like a great game and passion to pursue. And then as years and time went by, I realized that learning languages only made my world bigger and expanded my horizons. Then when I was 13, 14, my parents sent me abroad for the summer to the UK and Ireland. Then at 18, I chose to study English in college. I did my exchange year in Sweden. And then, well, I was really lucky to get this traineeship at the European Commission in Luxembourg. So, I would say that the journey started really, really early, but it went on and still ongoing.
You're a sworn translator. Can you explain what that means and what type of documents need a sworn translation?
Sure. A sworn translation is an official translation, sworn and stamped by a translator that's been appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In Spain, the way the system works is that sworn translators have to take this exam. It's extremely demanding, and the pass rates every time that this exam takes place, which is not every year, are extremely low. Like I would say, maybe for English, between 2 and 5% of applicants actually pass the test and get appointed. So that's what makes a sworn translation different from regular translations. The kind of documents that would normally need to be translated by a sworn translator would be all documents that you would need to deal with the public administrations. For example, birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, police background checks, academic transcripts. Well, the kind of documents that moms abroad are always dealing with, so that they can register their kids in their new countries. That's the kind of documents that a sworn translator would need to translate.
You translate from English, Portuguese, and French into Spanish.
Yes.
So, do translators always translate into their native language?
Well, the short answer, yes. The thing is, you need to have a very, very deep understanding of language to be able to translate into it. And no matter how skilled you are in a language different than your own mother tongue, it's never going to be as deep. So you really need that to be able to translate into a particular language. And the thing is, there are some translators out there who are extremely skilled and who are near bilingual. And some people feel comfortable translating into two languages. Myself, I very, very, very rarely translate into English. Maybe some boilerplate kind of documents, for example, birth certificate, which is pretty much always the same. I would dare translate into English, but then again, I'd always have someone to proof it for me, because again, no matter how good you are at the language, it's not your own. So yeah, short answer, yes, always translate into your native language.
I know a lot of bilingual people, and bilingual as in they've grown up with two languages since birth, but even they seem to still choose or favor one over the other when it
Yes.
comes to reading or,
That's always
like
the
you're
case.
saying about translation. Yeah. So Thinking Side is your business. It's an interesting name. Does it mean anything particular?
Yeah, it has to do with the way the brain works. We have our right side or right brain, which deals with feelings, with emotions, with creativity, basically with how we perceive the world. And it's absolutely nonverbal. Like, things happen there without structure. It's a wild area where the magic happens, but the thing is, the magic needs some structure to get out. So the left side is the logical part of the brain, rational. It has to do with expression, and it has to do with language as well. So the thing is, there's so much going on, and so much magic, and great things and great ideas. But those ideas need the help of the thinking side to go out in the world. And that's the parallel I wanted to draw with my business. Like, my clients need the thinking side to go out in the world and make themselves understood, and have their message spread.
I love that idea. So we've already mentioned that you're a sworn translator, but you have other services as well. And many of your clients are companies entering the Spanish market. So how exactly do you help them?
Well, I provide language support mainly, but the journey begins much sooner than that. I'd like to think of myself as a cultural advisor, because I help them navigate an entirely different market and an entirely different context. When my clients decide to launch into the Spanish market, they might or might not be familiar with how Spain, the business world, or well, cultural things work in their new target market. And that's where I come in. Like, I'd be in charge of translating their messages into Spanish, but also to guide them and let them know what works, what doesn't work, what's allowed, what's not, and ultimately what's going to resonate with the Spanish audience.
And when you talk about translations, that would be websites, catalogues, any kind of documentation that they need, presumably.
Yes. That includes a really, really wide array of documents or media. Yeah. Websites, catalogs, leaflets, brochures, so many things.
And you specialize in something called transcreation. What is that exactly?
That's right. Well, many people know Transcreation by different names. Transcreation covers creative translation, marketing translation, advertising translation. Well, the name comes from translation and creation. The thing is, with creative translation, the challenge lies in creating the same effect for the target audience as the message does for the source audience. So you have to recreate your client's message in a way that's attractive, that's appropriate, and that's also relevant for them. And that can be extremely demanding at times, because some ideas or some campaigns, taglines, might be largely based on a specific, very specific context, and that's really cultural specific. So sometimes what might perfectly work for a UK audience might not work at all for a Spanish audience, and that's where I come in.
Can you give any examples of that?
I would go to one that I often resort to for American clients, especially. They have these huge campaigns coming in just in time for Thanksgiving, and sometimes the images they use are very closely linked to Thanksgiving, and they are going to launch in different countries all over the world, which probably don't celebrate Thanksgiving at all. But the time is right for them. That's why they make them coincide with Thanksgiving, or around the time of Thanksgiving. The thing is, like, this doesn't work at all for most countries outside the US. So you have to find elements that will mean something for the new audience. And sometimes, for example, if they do it, like the very end of November, early December, you might replace some elements with Christmas images that might work much better for Spanish audience, for example.
And what would you say makes you stand out from other translators, Aida?
That's a tough one, because to be perfectly honest, there are thousands of translators out there, and there are loads of excellent translators out there. So it's not easy to stand out in a market like this, but you have to be very clear on what you're bringing to the table. And for me, that would be that I always make sure that I build rapport with my clients. I need to make 100% sure that I understand their needs and their goals, because I'm really aware of the responsibility that I have every time that I land a new client, because people are entrusting me with their message, and their words are their own. But once we make the jump into the Spanish market, their words are going to be represented by my own words. So I always try to understand what they are after, what their goals are, what their dreams are. And I always try to keep them in the loop, because the translation process is one that most people might not be familiar with. So I want to make sure they understand perfectly what's involved, how it's going to work, different stages, and what to expect at the end of it. So I'd say, yeah, and that's pretty much it for me. I'm really aware of the massive responsibility it involves, and I like to make sure I understand fully what the client really needs.
Well, that in itself is really positive. And I would add to that your rich kind of cultural heritage and background. The fact that you know so many languages and you've lived in different countries, you're obviously very culturally aware of what's going on. And I think that's a great positive as well. Aida, just to finish, what do you love about your work?
I love the challenges it poses, and I love the fact that I can become a bridge between cultures, and I can facilitate communication and understanding between cultures and environments and people who wouldn't normally understand each other if it weren't for this bridging element. And I just love the fact that that element happens to be me.
I think that's great. Very, very, very important. Okay, I'm going to put at the bottom of the screen your website address. That's thinkingside.com. And there, anybody that's interested to find out more about your services, they can take a look, and they'll also find your contact details, so email address and telephone number. So that just remains for me to say thank you very much for joining me today, Aida.
Thank you so much, Jane.